Some artists become part of the soundtrack of a generation, and Clare Grogan managed to do that before she was 20. As the frontwoman of Altered Images, she helped create some of the most memorable pop music of the early 80s. Songs like Happy Birthday, I Could Be Happy, See Those Eyes, Don't Talk to Me About Love, combined infectious melodies with a distinctive personality that set the band apart. At the same time, Clare became one of the defining faces of her generation through the classic film Gregory's Girl. Clare Grogan, welcome. This is a great pleasure for someone brought up in the UK. Obviously, you mean a lot to me in terms of musical taste in that era. I want to start though with Glasgow when you were growing up in the 70s and sort of paint a picture for me what Glasgow was like.
Well, Glasgow is a city that I'm passionate about. And I think sometimes it gets a bit of a rough deal, but I think that attitude is changing a little bit. But when I grew up in the 60s, well, I was born in 1962, and I was brought up in the centre of town in an area called Garnet Hill, with my mum and my dad and my big sisters, and it was just rich in diversity. And I think that's why a lot of Scottish people feel so passionate about this, because I lived in a street full of lots and lots of different nationalities. And I think that made us all grow up being kind of quite accepting of what was around us and supported by it, and vice versa. I think that I grew up in a household with lots and lots of great music taste, because we came from a sort of a three-generational family. We're living in the same building together, so there was lots of music. My great aunt Winnie was the organ player at St Aloysius Church, which is a big iconic church in Glasgow. So it was kind of rich, not in money, but in an awful lot of love and culture and appreciation, and I think that's what's made me who I am today.
Did it give you sort of a sense of family that has stayed with you for your life?
Completely. And I used to take it almost for granted that everyone had that, and they don't. And I don't think you can underestimate the value of good parenting, and that parenting come in all different sort of forms. But my mum and dad were parents. We had boundaries, we had love, we had sweeties.
What about music though? What sort of
Lots of
different
music.
There must have been so many different styles and tastes in one household.
Yeah, because my aunt and uncle lived with us for a while as well, so they were like really down that whole Rolling Stones, Motown road. My dad was very much Doris Day, the Glenn Miller Band. My mum was a huge Herb Alpert fan, Barry White fan. So it was very eclectic. My big sisters introduced me to David Bowie and Roxy Music, and it was kind of cool that I had this environment around me. I mean, I was kind of oblivious to the fact that it was going to happen with me over the years, but I feel so grateful.
I mean, when I was 13, about 1972, I think that was the moment for me that David Bowie, who then, had a big impact on my life, because it was somewhere where I felt as a young kid I could belong. In the same sense, I would have thought that punk 75, 76 must have come along in the same age for you. You would have been a young teenager. Was that a sense of belonging that was away from the sphere of your family?
I think when I first came across Debbie Harry, Polystyrene, and Susie Sue, I went, okay, I have found my people. I have found my tribe. And it allowed me to express myself and introduce my family to my tastes, which I can honestly say my parents weren't interested in.
What did they say?
They were deeply disturbed by it. But I think what they did recognise was they had a daughter that really had a connection with that, because I was a bit out there, Steve. I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm like crazy. I wasn't crazy, but I was somebody who felt like I had to express myself very much in my own way, and not in a loud way, not in a rebellious way, but I didn't ever feel like I had to go along with things the way you were meant to.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, as someone who's gay, when I was a teenager, obviously dealing with my sexuality at 13, that's why Bowie provided not just the music, but he provided, as you said, let's say Susie provided a world of belonging as well. How important do you think it is for someone of that age to find their tribe?
Really important. And I think I don't know. I mean, I can see that my daughter, she's 21, she's got her own taste in music and her own views and things. And I mean, my mum used to always say to me, you will always find your people, Claire, because that's what happens in life. And you gravitate towards like-minded people. And I think if you're brought up in an environment that's quite open and accepting, that can touch lots of different corners. And I'm sounding a bit more like, I don't know, this is not political in any way, Steve, it really isn't. But I do think if you come from an environment that encourages you to explore and to think about the way other people live as well, and then make an assessment about who you are and find your way with the world. And I think that's to be encouraged. And I think we're all really influenced by the environments that we grow up in. And as I say, in many ways, when I was growing up in the centre of town in Glasgow, which was like a rough old place, but within that, there was a lot of very, very decent, lovely people who you became the sort of moral compass, I don't know how to describe it. In a weird way, Steve, I'm just back from Boston, where I went to do an event for a really gorgeous global charity called Street Soccer. And Scotland were playing, so I went along and played at this big event for street soccer and then got to go and see the match. And the thing that I really clocked was how the Scotland fans all keep each other in check. It's like, you do not cross that line. If you cross that line, you're not part of the Tartan Army. And it really made me laugh, because I think when you find your pals, and there'll always be someone who wants to push it a wee bit too far, and it's about being with people that will go, that's enough now. And believe me, I needed someone like that in my life.
Didn't your mother actually almost, keep you in check as well by giving you this sort of, in a sense, religious warning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, she said, just remember, the Virgin Mary is everywhere you go and she's watching you, and you wouldn't want to let the Virgin Mary down, Claire, would you?
Did that hit you at times in your life when you
Oh,
were
God, yeah.
like going, oh God, yeah, definitely
My
can't
mum,
go further?
Yeah, my mum absolutely knew what she was doing with that stuff. Obviously, none of us want to, want the young people in our lives to grow up with a sense of fear. But I think there has to be a sense of caution to a certain extent. I don't know. I mean, but my husband is constantly reminding me when I'm nagging my daughter about stuff. He's like, Claire, it's like you've forgotten who you were. And I said, I'm just trying to avoid her a lot of trouble.
Oh, that's brilliant. Pass it down. That's what you've got to do. Was there a particular record that really woke you up in terms of music? And I presume it must have been from Susie and the Banshees at that time.
I mean, to a certain extent, Hong Kong Garden blew my mind, but I have to say, Parallel Lines, the Blondie album absolutely spoke to me in a huge way. It really did. I think also I really loved Talking Heads at that point. I really loved the Simple Minds from Glasgow, and there's something about people that you've kind of grown alongside with doing well, and it makes you feel like it's possible. And then, of course, I heard Hong Kong Garden, and I genuinely, people do ask me about this, but I did genuinely carry around a copy of Hong Kong Garden for at least 5 years, just in case I found someone that hadn't heard it. You know, because everyone had record players back then, so I'd be like, "Have you got this? Could you put that on for me, please?" I mean,
The two women that you mentioned in bands, Susie Sue and Debbie Harry, of course, extremely strong personalities. And I presume what they represented for a young woman at that time was something incredibly important.
yeah, I mean, I think that, do you know what it was? It was the difference in the way they looked to a certain extent. And I think that I was really always drawn towards entertainment. I loved films, I loved music. I had no idea how I was going to achieve any kind of career. I mean, career wasn't even in my vocabulary. You know, I don't think it was in any of our vocabularies when we were teenagers. But there was something about them that made me think, you don't have to be a certain type of person to be within this industry and make it work. And I absolutely loved the notion of the fact that you didn't have to be perfect looking with straight teeth, and David Bowie wasn't, you know, I mean, even he's a great example of somebody really quirky. So I think you were either really drawn towards that or not. But I do think for women it was different, because I'm not in any way I'm such a big fan of women in music and in film. I can't knock any of them. I don't want to knock any of them. But sometimes you would look at some women and think, I could never be that person. And and there was something about those women who was like, come and join the party. They just, I don't know how to describe it, but they were a bit like, if we're here, you can be here too.
I mean, it does sound that you had immense strength and, in a sense, wrong word, but in a sense, balls, because some of the things that you did at the start really were like you were fearless. And, you know, so tell me about how the band came together, and then this moment where you decide, oh, we can just ask Susie and the Banshees if we can tour with them.
I mean, I think it's a combination of the naivety and arrogance of youth, which I think is a very helpful tool when you start out. And I think it's because we didn't really know what we were really asking. Even although we were asking it, we didn't know that it was more complicated than just saying, we really like you, can we come and play with you? And I mean, why people went along with us, I used to think I have no idea why, but now I look back on it, I think, and I wonder if they just saw something in us that made them think, yeah.
Well, don't you think
Okay.
they saw something in them, in you?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think it's all about, I mean, confidence is such a big thing, but you know, at that point in my life, I didn't even know what having confidence was. And I'm not just saying that, you know, I was a girl growing up in Glasgow where everyone's told no one likes a show off. And I did realise I was probably going to be in quite a lot of trouble with that sort of thing, because I just loved going, I'm here. So I don't know.
Were any of you musicians at the start?
No. I mean, like a lot of bands back then, the boys bought their instruments and then started a band. So they were learning as they go. And I think that there's a gorgeous naivety to that that really shines in the end, about that feeling like, but I think that's what all those punk bands did. They made you think, why not? Why can't we be part of something? So that whole post punk era was about the next generation of kids coming along and going, well, you did it, we can do it too. And I think that, yeah, but the other thing is, sometimes I think it's a mistake to make it out that it was all some kind of huge, big, happy accident. I think we had a commitment to it from the word go that not everyone does. I just thought we're really in it to make this work. We're not playing at it. We can see ourselves in on top of the pops. And I think it was that vision and as I say, a lot of it came from naivety and arrogance. But I just thought we were like, why shouldn't it be us?
Was there a moment where you actually thought that, this vision can work? Was there sort of a moment where you were playing together in a rehearsal or you were playing around where suddenly it clicked?
Honestly, I didn't doubt it. From the word go, I didn't doubt it. It's like insane. But I just thought, well, we're good. We want to do this. Why wouldn't people give us a chance? And I think that attitude of ours really carried us well because we refused to be ignored. And I think that, we had our plan. We were like, when we got in touch with the Banshees to support them on tour in Scotland, and they said yes. And then it got extended to doing the Kaleidoscope tour UK wide, which was amazing. We really wanted John Peel to like us. So when we played Leeds Futurama, we had everyone bugging him to come and see us. I mean, there was literally hundreds of bands there. But he did come and see us and he loved us. And then we got a big record deal. I mean, we must have had something, I think.
But it wasn't that easy, really, was it? Because you were told if you want to stay in the band, you've got to write songs.
Yes. Oh my God. And what a gift that has given me in life because, I think it's kind of well documented that you've got to write songs to make some money. So at first I was like, I can't write a song. I mean, honestly, I was 17 and clueless. I don't mind singing, but I'm not writing songs. But they were insistent, and that was very much Johnny McElhone, who then went on to be in Hitsway and now in Texas. He was like, Claire, you've got to do this. And I found out that I had a little secret ability to do something I'd never considered before.
Well, how did that challenge change you then? Because when you write anything, I mean, I write as a sort of hobby. It hasn't become a career, but I write, and obviously when I'm writing, it changes me because it's about there's elements of yourself in anything you write and you do creatively. So I just wondered how that started to change you and how you started to change thinking about writing and what it meant to you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it became, at times, it's not a daily habit, but it's such a regular thing in my life. I've got notebooks all around my house and in my handbags, and I'm always about ideas. And I think that when you have that sort of Glasgow upbringing, you're not necessarily brought up to think that you could be one of those people. And I think two things happened to me. I met Bill Forsyth, who had kind of like a really genuine faith in me that I was a creative person and encouraged me. And I think that when you're really young and to have someone older that you respect say that to you, I mean, you can't underestimate the power of that, really. But yeah, it's just something that that's in me where I don't know. I just love ideas, and you know what? I'm never dealing with big budgets. That's the other thing. See, I can't wait for someone to say, Claire would like you to do this and we've got lots of money for you. But that is not the conversation I get to have very often. But I like the fact that sometimes when you really have to just think without the luxury of a ginormous machine behind you and a huge budget, you are down to a notebook and what you can actually pull off. And I think there's something really special about that has allowed me to go encourage others, just to say, well, listen, it's not necessarily about money or talent. I think it's what it's about is discipline.
I mean, many artists have said that creativity comes from a place of being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And that can be many things. It can be no money, but it can also be a place of actually laying your wounds bare. You know what I mean?
very much so. I mean, sometimes I'm a big oversharer, and I think that that comes across in my songwriting as well. And I think that, you know, I can't be embarrassed about that. Although sometimes I think, oh gosh, have I really, because I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable in my life, to feel uncomfortable about me referencing them in my life. I mean, it's like a very thin line to tread. It just is. But you know what? I just love the fact that I'm having this conversation with you now, and I can be honest about it, and I can sort of own it a wee bit. Because for many, many years, I just felt like, I mean, everyone talks about imposter syndrome, and I'm not saying that I don't still get it, because I do. But I also think, gosh, Claire, you've worked a lot. There must be something to this, you know?
But is that because, in a sense, your image was defined by the audience before you could define it yourself? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you were so young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people responded to me in an extraordinary way, um, and I'm not going to pretend that didn't sometimes cause problems when I was in the band, because I think it's kind of the least thing that they expected when they asked me to get involved. I mean, I think I was their only option. Well, actually, I wasn't their only option. They'd asked my sister, and she turned them down, but she said Claire might do it. And so actually, I was their only option. So I don't think they really had prepared themselves for what was going to come next. And nor was I prepared for it. I really wasn't. But here I am, 45 years later.
So tell me about being on stage with Susie at that point,
Mm.
and having this support slot on their Kaleidoscope tour. What did you glean from Susie, Steve Severin? What did you glean from the band?
I think that what came across, I mean, this is all quite in hindsight stuff, I'll be honest, because at the time, you know, you're just living it and not analysing it. And I still try not to analyse too much. But my big takeaway from them was how supportive they were. And I think that they had a bit of a scary image. But if you were in a room with them, you could, and they all seemed so much older than us. But in fact, they were only about 5 years older than us, which is kind of nothing. But at the time, it was like, I cannot believe that we're getting to hang out with them. And that's what they did let us do. It wasn't like you're there and we're up here. It was like we're all in this together. And I think that's a really brilliant way to be with people, to just go, we are no better than each other. We are a collective of artists and musicians that are doing our own thing, and we all deserve respect and equality, I suppose. You know, it's they were really, really kind to us.
I mean, it's also validation, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
in a sense, what John Peel probably gave you as well, because, you know, I mean, today, I think for people who aren't of our generation, maybe John Peel needs to be more explained, but he was, you know, he was someone who championed people who were really on the outside and probably wouldn't have got a chance without him actually being the champion of these artists. So that support and validation that came from him must have been something incredibly special at that phase of your life.
Yeah, I mean, immensely. It was, I think without John Peel, I'm not sure it would have moved as quickly as it did. And the thing, I mean, I would say the one thing about John, because I mean, I caught up with him every year throughout his life, from when I met him. And my big regret is he's the one person that I never really had a proper conversation with, because he was, I don't know why, but he was the one person that I always felt a little bit in awe of, I suppose, or just, but I mean, the fact that I persuaded him, I mean, I look back at my young self and I'm thinking, oh God, Claire, you were nuts. Persuaded him to do backing vocals on of all songs, Song Sung Blue. I mean, there was just like this little cheeky person in me. I mean, there still is, where I'll go, right, what is the least likely thing I can ask this person to do? And let's do this.
I mean, your first single, this Dead Pop Stars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first of all, tell me about that song, but
Yeah.
also tell me about why it couldn't work at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dead Pop Stars, I wasn't involved in the writing of Dead Pop Stars, so I have to say that firstly. That was mostly written by Caesar, who was in our band originally and then went on to have a band called The Wake. And he was so talented, Caesar, and still is. And he wrote this song, which I absolutely loved. I probably put my own spin in it in some ways, but it was really all came from him initially. And it's just so cheeky, Dead Pop Stars. Rotting in a studio, hear them on the radio, dead, 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 dead. Like, it was all about the old rockers kind of thing, And I think that when we released it, we were super excited because it was our first single. And as a young band, that's a big moment in your career. Unfortunately, it's slightly timed with the assassination of John Lennon, and it just seemed really inappropriate. So it did get pulled, and it's not even on the first album. And I think that was the right decision. I really do think it was the right decision. But I do sing it live now, most shows, because people love it. And also it was just so not meant to be in any way connected to that hideous situation that happened. I mean, I know that's stating the obvious, but you know what I mean? It was just like, out of respect, I thought, no. And now I think I'm just going to be really cheeky and get again and say I think John Lennon would be okay with us singing it now.
It's a song of its time, and if you're from that time, it's a song that you completely love because it's got the anarchic aspect to it. It's got the sort of like, we're young and you're old, when we're not thinking we're going to get there at some point,
But also the great irony now is I am older and I get to sing it, and so it's just got this really like bittersweet thing for me as well, because it's a complicated feeling for me singing that song sometimes, but I do love it.
I mean, I don't know if the sort of double fame happened at the same time, but it felt like it all happened in one go. You mentioned Bill Forsyth, but Gregory's Girl became, a classic almost immediately. And then Altered Images breaks through in this very short period of time. So it's, there you are, you're a film star and a pop star in one go.
Yeah.
And that must have completely turned your life upside down.
Oh, I mean, it was massive. And, as I say, the summer I left school, I made Gregory's Girl and I got signed to CBS, Epic Records.
Do you think people saw these two, the character that you played in Gregory's Girl and you, Claire, from Altered Images, as the same person or as different people?
No, absolutely didn't. I mean, I tell this story quite a lot about being at home and my mum calling me downstairs to the phone, and she's like, Claire, Simon's on the phone. Simon was our A&R guy, and I mean, in those days, our parents had to sign our record deal because we were too young. So everyone knew each other. And Simon, I came out on the phone and I was like, hi, Simon. And he was like, Claire, I've just read that you're in a film that's been nominated for a BAFTA, and I'm wondering why you've never mentioned this to me before. And I was like, well, I mean, I just didn't see the relevance kind of thing, And of course, in nowadays marketing would be all over that. But back then, it honestly didn't even occur to me to tell the record label that I'd made a film.
But isn't that also part of being Scottish? You know what I mean? You mentioned like in that community, you had, in a sense, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but I remember talking to Justin Curry, and you know, after he was on Top of the Pops, he got the bus the next day, and the driver said to him, "What are you doing on the bus? Fuck off! You know, like you shouldn't be on a bus."
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny. I mean, it was a really funny position to be in, and I will say you do find out who your real friends are. And most of them have remained with me throughout my life. Yeah, I mean, I look back on it now and I just think how extraordinary, but I also, going back to my parents, think they really kept my feet on the ground. You know, I think years afterwards, they said, we were terrified for you, Claire, but we also knew that trying to stop you in any way would have been so much worse. But we kind of had to watch on the sidelines with our fingers crossed that nothing, that you'd be okay. And in those days, we didn't have mobile phones or FaceTime, and I would be staying in amazing hotels, being jetted around all over the world, but I couldn't afford to put a call in from a hotel room. I mean, I couldn't. I would have to find, like, thank goodness there was like phone coin boxes where you could just, like, I'd get my like little, nickels and dimes, and I'm not joking. I mean, that's the way it was, and I suppose that overall kept all of us like with our feet on the ground a bit. We'd go stay in nice hotels that the label would put us in, but couldn't afford room service. The whole thing was bizarre, but none of it bothered us. I mean, we just got on with it, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it was insane. What a life.
I mean, your band and you created, which I would say probably one of the most defining British pop albums of the era when Happy Birthday arrived in 1981. Did it feel special when you were making it, or was it just some sort of next step for you?
No, actually, I think a lot about how we were in this very protective bubble. We recorded it in Rockfield in Wales. And I think we all had a sense that our lives were about to change. I don't think we had any idea the extent of it at that point. But I do think we thought, we're here together creating this sound with Steve Severin from the Banshees, and at some point we're going to have to let all these songs go into the world, and we weren't sure. I mean, someone asked this, because obviously I've been doing a day of these interviews, and someone said to me, did you ever think it wasn't going to work? And I'll be honest with you, I'd never for a second thought it wasn't going to work. And I don't know what that was. I mean, obviously we all crashed and burned really big, but at that moment in Rockfield, we were so ready for what was coming next to a certain extent, and that within that little bubble of ours, I think we were sort of like having really good fun. But we always were really like committed to creating the best songs and artwork we possibly could. I mean, we were one of those bands that had an artist that painted all our sleeves for us, our beautiful friend David Band, who's no longer with us. I mean, and just about the way we looked. I mean, we were really focused in our own way and all that stuff. And I think that's what paid off in the end, that we weren't just a bunch of mates having a laugh. We were a group of young people who had a shared passion and dream to create something that was probably beyond our expectations, but nothing was going to put us off.
I mean, I think what's interesting, I mean, if you look at the track Happy Birthday, it's one of those songs that in the first moment, you feel like it could tip into novelty, but instead it became a timeless classic.
Yeah.
And I mean, tell me about the recording of that and the thinking behind that track.
Well, I think that we did record it with Steve Severin, and at that point, Happy Birthday and I Could Be Happy with this, within the same song. And I think when we delivered the album to um, the label, they were like, "This is great, but there's no big standout song to launch it from." And they talked us into getting together with Martin Russian, which actually was no big deal because we're massive fans of the Buzzcocks, the Stranglers, the Human League. So we were like really happy to meet Martin, and he said, "I think you've got two songs within one song here." And he was absolutely right. So we went back into the studio and we recorded Happy Birthday and took out the I Could Be Happy aspect of it. It's hard to describe. I wish I could play it some, but I don't have it. And we stuck with that. And I think for me, and I never ever want to go into detail about the meaning behind songs, but for me, there's within every song I wrote then, there was a little dark twist to it, is all I'm going to say.
No, but I think that's really clear, though, as a
Mm-hmm.
listener of that music, and that's not in retrospect. That was at the time, and I think that was the beauty of it. There was some sort of twist. You knew it. It was almost like the beauty of the outside had something dark and a little bit dodgy on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I loved when I started songwriting, I loved the idea of all these nursery rhymes that were about something quite sinister. So there would be like this really catchy thing going on, but the message in it was not what you'd expect. And I really, even as a young person, I loved the idea of that. And it's funny because a lot of people have picked up on that in recent years, and they all, because I write with Bernard Butler as well, and he says, Claire, every song you write is basically about wanting to escape something. And I'm like, and but I do have a really lovely life, but there is something in me that goes, oh, I don't know. Let's not get too heavy.
Well, okay, but not won't get heavy. But in terms of someone that young, knowing these two sides of yourself
Mhm.
is quite a big thing. I mean, it's something that, I think it takes a lot of years to really understand that we all have different facets and not
Mhm.
all of them are complementary. Do you know what I mean? But we all have different sides. And I think if you're young and you can see that and express something like that in the music, it's fantastic.
I mean, I think part of it was when I was, just before the band really took off and just before I made Gregory's Girl, I was the subject of a really horrible incident, and that's why I've got scar on the left hand side of my face, and I think maybe that had an impact on me where, yeah, I think it definitely had an impact on me. I really do, and it was quite subconscious, but there was something about the minute that happens to you in life, you realize that life is not what you expect necessarily. And you're not necessarily the person that something like that won't happen to. But I was very young and I was very looked after afterwards. But it already left a mark in my, I guess, subconscious about just, I don't know, it's so hard to describe, and I don't talk about it very often. I really don't, because it's so in the past.
I mean, that's a physical wound. I mean, I've read about
Yeah.
that, and that was a very violent incident that you happened to be around and
Mhm.
then became part of it in a
Yeah.
sense. Um, a lot of people, myself included, anybody who's creative often has some wound in the past which drives them. And I'm
Mm.
wondering whether that physical wound helped drive you in the future.
I mean, honestly, I think it's had quite a big impact on me. I'm a big fan of imperfection as a result. Well, I would never be a fan of perfection anyway, but I really like the idea that the knocks that happen to you in life actually project you to the next place of positivity. And because it's literally like, you will not bring me down with this. And I've had quite a few incidents of that in my life where I'm just like not willing to give up. And I mean, my goodness, if you watch Gregory's Girl, I'm pretty much shot from the right hand perspective throughout the film because my wound was still so obvious. And then we came back and did some reshoots, and but because Bill Forsyth said he wasn't doing the film without me, and I think that when you have someone in your life who's gonna like stand up for you in that level, you don't want to let them down.
I mean, in a way, that's beautiful. So it's sort of something that has a beauty to it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather it hadn't happened.
Obviously.
But I think you use these. I mean, people talk a bit more about how failure is the thing that actually motivates you to succeed. I mean, it's quite a big topic of conversation now, and I didn't see it as a failure or anything, but the things that go wrong in your life are sometimes the things that really, really focus you.
Yeah, but you have to be aware. You have to see it.
Yeah.
The visual identity of Altered Images was as distinctive, really, as the music. And the late David Band created the artwork. What did he understand about Altered Images that other people didn't?
I think David and I were really good pals. He was a bit older than me and went to Glasgow Art School when I was still at school, and we became friends. And he used to get quite embarrassed if I turned up at Glasgow Art School in my school uniform to see him with a strawberry tart. And I think we were so into the whole band where it wasn't just me, it was all of us really loved the idea of the visual aspect as well as the records themselves, about defining ourselves in some kind of abstract way. And I think David really understood that fact, and we didn't want to have a record sleeve with our pictures on it at first. I mean, the record label finally was like, come on, guys. But we really liked the idea of everything just being not quite what you expect. And I guess David was probably one of the only painters we knew at that time. So, but he was so good at it. And of course, he created the iconic dove on the Spandau Ballet album as well. I mean, yeah, I was really heartbroken when David passed away.
Now, by the time the second album, Pinky Blue, came out, it was 1982, yeah. And you were the biggest pop group in Britain at the time. How did success change the atmosphere within the band?
Quite a lot, I'd say. I really don't like the Pinky Blue sleeves at all. I think we got really talked into that, and I think that I hated the idea of it and all the rest of it. But they allowed us to have David have some input in it. I think it became just much more pressurized, I suppose. But we were being so rushed all the time. I mean, we were happy to be rushed. Don't get me wrong. We didn't put up any barriers to it. But I think it was an awful lot for a group of young people to just get their heads round, I suppose. And I really loved working with Martin Rushent. He was someone else. There's been really significant people that have gone, Claire, you're here for a reason, as opposed to you're here because it's a big happy accident. And Martin was really great with me. He made me really believe in my ability to. I mean, because the thing is, I can sing. I was in school choirs and I love singing, but I do have quite an unusual voice, which I now realise is an asset because it's kind of like you can always identify my voice straight away. But there was a period where I think everybody wanted it to be a bit more generic, a bit more like, I don't know how to describe it. And that put me under pressure to try and lose my own instinctive voice for a while. And Martin Rushent was like, Claire, just sing, be yourself. And, I had that with everyone I worked with. I really did, which was great. It was my own self-doubt that creeped in and sort of spoiled all of that. I don't know how to fully explain it, but, I think you probably remember, Steve, at the time, the music press were a different beast altogether. And everybody loved me, and then they didn't. And I was a 20-year-old young girl from Glasgow thinking, what did I do wrong? And I paid too much attention to that. So I lost that crazy self-belief. Nothing's going to get in my way. I was so young. But I do think they were really harsh. I've had this conversation with other women who were part of the scene at the same time, and they were like, yeah, it was like they were kind of gods, and if they decided you were no longer relevant, then they could really, people wrote some really mean things about me.
I think in certain aspects, nothing's changed in terms of women fronting groups or being solo in groups, how they are treated in comparison to men. And maybe the music press at that point had a real problem because you were commercially successful, intelligent, good looking, and had everything. Do you know what I mean? It's that can be a threat.
Yeah, I think they just really wanted to, no pun intended, burst my balloon. They really did.
I mean, the balloon did burst because Jim and Titch left, but then Steve came in.
Yeah.
So in a sense, out of something bad, particularly for your personal life as well as musically, something changed, which
Yeah,
was a positive.
massively so. And Stephen came in um, and just had a whole kind of fresh view of what we should be doing, and we all agreed with him. It was great. I mean, it was pretty much his idea to go down this sort of kind of Georgia Moroder, because this was all music we listened to in the tour bus all the time. So I loved his ambition for us, and we all couldn't wait. I mean, in my head still, I can't go over the fact that we managed to get Mike Chapman and Tony Visconti to work on that Bite album with us. And I feel so great about that still. And with Stephen, he was the one that, he was like, I don't know, just he gave me back some faith in myself, but just in a silly way. But it was really impactful. And but of course, when we were in the band together, I never imagined in a million years I'd end up married to him for like 100 years. But here we are together still. Yeah, it was. You're right. I mean, everything worked out really well.
Yeah, well, it's amazing because we start off with Steve Severin, we've got Martin Rushent, and there you are with Mike Chapman and Tony Visconti.
I know.
And looking at your history and what you talked about musically, Mike Chapman was Blondie, Susie Quattro, the Knack. Then you've got Tony Visconti, of course, Bowie, and so
Mark Bolan.
Mark Bolan, yeah, this must have been a complete dream come true, but they're different as producers. So what was the difference about working with them for
Well,
you?
I mean, Mike Chapman, we went to LA and recorded his section of the album, and we worked in the studio that he always worked from, and Shalimar were in the studio next door to us, and members of the Blondie and the Sex Pistols came and visited us. I mean, it was really rock and roll, and I loved it. And I met Mike years afterwards, and he said, "Oh my God, you guys nearly pushed me over the edge." And he said what I didn't expect was to have these four Glaswegians with really big opinions to the almighty Mike Chapman. No, Mike, we're not thinking that's the way to do it, actually. And he said it really challenged him, and it made him sort of like, I felt quite proud that we nearly pushed Mike Chapman over the edge. But we were so gobby, and that crazy, it's still the arrogance of youth was still in there. So it was like, well, we'd like this, Mike, but why don't we do it our way? I'm not saying that at all, because he's a genius producer. And I think Don't Talk to Me About Love is probably one of my all-time favourite Altered Images songs. I just think it's just a pop classic. And he really knows what he's doing. I mean, he absolutely does. But, I think we gave him a bit of a ride.
Did you struggle after that period of success and those three albums and that was over? Because it seemed almost like you went with ease into a new life.
No, it wasn't easy at all. I was getting really pulled into very big directions. Because when after Bite came out, and it had mixed reviews, but I love the album, I really do. And it's funny, it's the album people talk to me about the most now. And it did really well. And we did a tour of the States with it, and I was being sort of courted by producers all the time to make films, and it got really tricky. It just did, because I was being pulled in a couple of different directions. So when we got back from that tour, I did make Comfort and Joy with Bill Forsyth, and I think certain members of the band were a bit miffed with me about that, and I don't necessarily blame them, but I just felt like I got to a point where I just thought I can't please everyone, so I stopped trying to please anyone and just backed off from it and left the band and decided I just wanted to just take a breath, And I think that's when Stephen and I became close, because he became my friend and was like, "This is going to be okay, Claire." I had no idea if it was going to be okay or not. And I've had some rough patches within all of this, professionally, mentally, because you cannot sustain 45 years in this business without hitting some potholes, you just can't. But I just always thought, I need to be more in control of it. I hate this being in control of me. And I think that seed started at that point where I knew I was always going to have to work, because I hadn't made any money. But I just started thinking, I want to make decisions that are based on what I think, and not having to do this for everyone else around me. And I know that sounds a bit selfish, but I just couldn't do it anymore.
You returned to Altered Images.
Yeah.
There were periods that you sort of came back in terms of doing something in relation to Altered Images. And then in 2022, and you mentioned Bernard Butler and, of course, its contribution on Mascara Streaks. And that album was successful. So did success, in a sense, give you the confidence again to say, I can do this. This is what I want to do? Because with this tour coming up, that's really important.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so fortunate. As I say, I've always had to earn a living, and out of that, I've got to do things I didn't necessarily expect to do in life. Done lots of presenting and doing stuff for the radio, and done, I mean, God, getting to do like Skins, Father Ted, I mean, EastEnders, I mean, just all this stuff has been magic. But when lockdown happened, I was in Scotland. I was doing a play at Pitlochry Festival Theatre, which is this gorgeous theatre in the Highlands. I was doing Barefoot in the Park, the Neil Simon comedy, and it shut down because of COVID. And I came back to London. And like everyone, I thought, we'll all get back to normal in a couple of weeks. And of course, that didn't happen. And the most extraordinary thing happened. I suddenly thought, I need to sing. I really need to sing. And that took me by surprise a bit. You know, it really did. And then obviously I was locked down with Stephen, who's an amazing writer and producer. So I said, once we'd watched all of Netflix, like everyone else, I said, shall we write some songs? And we did. And it just grew from there. And we did quite a lot of it remotely. And then eventually, at the periods where we could be in a room together, we'd be together. And it was just the most, I loved it. And then for it to be received so well was just extraordinary. And yeah.
Do you find it satisfying that the body of work that you've created is a cross-generational body of work when you're on stage, that you actually see that younger people are connecting?
I mean, it's amazing for me. I think that, I mean, obviously there is a huge amount of nostalgia attached to all this for everyone, but also it's about being in the moment of a group of people that just love music and have a certain taste in music and want to be part of that, no matter across the generation. And I always say this about my daughter, you know, when she's got any friends around, they listen to a lot of stuff, and then eventually, at some point, all the 80s music will come on because they all love it. You know, and there's something really reassuring. But when the album came out and I played on the release date, I was at Rough Trade East to launch the album, and we did a set, and I just felt so great about the fact that, you know, there was like my generation and a much younger generation in that audience, and I thought, Claire, this is good. This is a nice feeling.
Just want to ask you finally about the human condition, because in a way we are all connected, that we all have similar experiences, and music often provides the key to that connection. So, you know, I can hear a song and it relates to something within me. It may be different to what it relates to within you, but it connects us. So what do you think about being in a band has taught you about that human condition and how we are all connected?
I think that I have such a great relationship with the audience now. And when I was young, I was just being on that stage, being a big silly show off. And now I look at everyone, young, old, and I just think we have all got our own life experiences. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But the older people in the audience, there's been some shit to deal with. But here we all are wanting to have this collective moment of music therapy together. And I love that.
Oh, Clare Grogan, I want to thank you. Really, I mean, altered images were a big part of my 80s. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you also for your contribution to popular culture, because it's been an important one. And also, I love the idea that you're going out there and you're on tour and you're performing and you're continuing that. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for your support. It means the world to me. I never take it for granted. And I'm not just saying that. I really mean it. I am overwhelmed with the support I still get. Thank you.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.